Welcome to PC Politics, Real, Raw, and Relevant. Brought to you by Spectacular Magazine. I'm your host, Phyllis Coley, CEO and publisher of Spectacular Magazine. Today, my guest is Sarah Vukelich.
There you go.
I'm sorry. My guest today is Sarah Vukelich, who is with the Durham City Workers Union, based in Durham, North Carolina. Hi, welcome. Thank you for coming today. So first of all, let's talk about the Durham City Workers Union. How long has it been in existence? How did it get started? And that kind of thing.
Yeah, sure. The maybe short version of the story, well before my time working for the city of Durham, maybe 20 years ago or a little more. The Durham City Workers Union was actually, it came out of some organizing of folks from an organization called Black Workers for Justice.
Okay.
And they do organizing, worker organizing, also community organizing, across the state of North Carolina. And they, I think, had some really strong organizers who worked for the city of Durham who saw a lot of injustice and saw a real need for organizing a union in the public sector. And so they started an organization called the North Carolina Public Service Workers Union, which is city workers from multiple cities across the state, as well as some state workers that form all together. We're a local of UE, which is a national union.
Yes.
UE Local 150, and the Durham City Workers Union is just a very old chapter of that bigger organization around just building worker power across the state of North Carolina.
You talk about worker power. Right now there is a campaign for a fair grievance process.
Yeah.
Grievance means that, explain it in your union term, how would you call a grievance? Is a complaint? Okay.
Yeah, a grievance is a complaint, and it could be a complaint about workplace conditions or just unfair practices, something that happens on the job that is unsafe or unjust. In many workplaces, there's a process in place for workers to have a formal process to file a grievance. A lot of the times it's rigged against the workers, so it's always a struggle for like a more fair grievance process. And in the city of Durham, city workers have actually lost a lot of our grievance rights. So things are increasingly basically biased against workers.
So can you make a complaint? Can you file a grievance at this point?
Right at this point, we are only allowed to grieve firing, suspension, and demotion. So only once things have gone that far are you even allowed to have a process through which you appeal and have a union steward helping you in your case. Even then, that person's power is very limited. They'll only allow either you to speak or your union steward to speak, so you can't both speak in your grievance hearing. And then short of those very extreme situations, if you have a write-up, you are not allowed to appeal that, and you're not allowed to file a grievance around that, even though that could lead to suspension, firing, demotion. So all you really can do is submit a rebuttal. Nobody looks at it. It goes in your file, and there's no investigation. Nothing happens. So even if you have evidence proving that all the claims against you are false, which often they are, there's no recourse. There's no way to get false information cleared from your file, and there's no way to have an investigation or file basically a complaint around something unfair. And there's a lot of things we're not allowed to grieve that we used to be allowed to grieve.
And when did this change? When did you start to see this change?
So about 5 years ago, a little more than 5 years ago, a new person came into the position of Director of Human Resources. And it's that person working very closely with the city manager, who has really, and the first thing that person did when she came into her position was roll back workers' grievance rights. So that's about when things changed, because we used to be allowed to grieve many more things. Like we could grieve, bullying and harassment from supervisors, unfair evaluations, unfair hiring practices and promotion practices, where we see a lot of racism across all departments of the city. There's no formal recourse for those kinds of things.
Okay. So let's talk about some of the things, some of those grievances, some of the issues that people have made complaints about.
Mm-hmm.
Not necessarily, these are not personal things, but because you're the recording secretary,
Right.
correct, of the
Yeah.
union, those things come across with
Yeah.
your position. Talk about some of the issues that people have made grievances about or complaints, or would have liked to.
Would have liked to have grievances. Yeah, so we see a lot of, as I was saying, racism in discipline and hiring and promotions. So there's been in water management, just recently we saw I think the 6th time at least in the last 10 months that some random white worker was given a position over black workers who have, years and years of experience and are much more qualified.
Mm-hmm.
So these are the kinds of things people have been pretty agitated about, and actually it's led many workers to leave the city because they get so frustrated at a certain point.
Mm-hmm.
So the city, so the kind of turnover rate is much higher than it should be.
Yeah, okay.
In that department, as well as another place that we've seen a lot of people, a lot of instances where people would have liked to file grievances, is in Parks and Recreation recently, especially the school age care unit.
Okay.
Both, there and in water management, people deal with a hostile work environment. People deal with unfair workloads. That's a form of retaliation, and other forms of retaliation that will be directly related to when employees file a complaint about something that is unsafe either for workers or even for children who are program participants, or discrimination against children with disabilities in Parks and Recreation. When workers make these kinds of complaints, they face retaliation. That's the kind of thing we should be allowed to grieve, to file a formal grievance that would trigger a real investigation. The city manager has said that they have done an investigation, but we know that not a single worker was spoken with for this so-called investigation. So how are you going to say that you have done an investigation when all you've done was just make up some data about how the turnover rate is normal, when it's really not normal, and it's just not that, and no investigation was done. There's no accountability between the bosses and the department directors and HR and city management. They all protect each other, always at the expense of workers. So if something's going wrong, there's no recourse, because all of these people in power are this united bloc.
Okay, so who would approve having this fair grievance process? Would this not be the same managers that you just spoke, that you're talking about?
So it was Human Resources that changed the grievance process. So it would be Human Resources that, in theory, could change it back. The city manager could push Human Resources to reinstate a more fair grievance process, at least what we used to have, if not something better and more favorable to workers and fair to workers. But we've seen that these people are they're protecting themselves, so they don't want for workers to have these protections. The city council also could, pressure the city manager to make the right decision in these situations, and to put these policies in place. But they seem to not really want to get involved in administrative issues, is what they call them, which is hard.
So, what does the campaign consist of? Is it letter writing? Are there petitions? What does the campaign consist of?
Yeah, we've been a few things. We've been collecting surveys from all departments across the city for quite some time to show that we have the support of the majority of workers. We had a very successful worker and community speak out, where we had workers from across departments, as well as parents and even children who've been impacted by problems in the DPR programming. So that was a big piece of our campaign. The Human Relations Commission is working on a kind of study of these cases, and has heard a lot of our testimony, and we've submitted statements to them. So they're working on playing a supporting role in this campaign and making a recommendation to City Council. I think we're going to need to do more than we've done, and just continue to put the pressure on, because as we've seen, the problem goes go all the way up to the top. So it's going to take a lot of building a lot of power and getting a lot of support from the community to be able to push these people in power to make the changes that we really need to see. But so we won't stop fighting. We're still really in this struggle. But that's a little bit of what some pieces of the campaign have looked like.
And how can people get more information? Is there a website? Is there a Facebook page?
The statewide union has a website where maybe some of these things. I'm not sure how much the Durham City Workers issues have been featured, but that's the North Carolina Public Service Workers Union, UE 150. I think UE 150. .org would be the website to check us out on.
Right.
And then Facebook, I think it's the same thing. We'll keep putting information through those sources, social media, I'm trying to think of how else. I mean, if people reach out, if people also want more information, want to reach out through those platforms, we'll definitely be in touch.
Thank you so much for coming today and telling our story and talking to us about the Durham City Workers Union and the campaign for the fair grievance process. This is Sarah Vukelich, who is with the Durham City Workers Union. I'm Phyllis Coley. I'm your host, and until next time, see ya.
Spectacular Magazine. We on the scene.